the Federal Reserve, banks, the OCC, Ripple, XRP, Kraken, what do they all have in common? What is going on right now in the banking space with digital currency, the acceptance of digital currencies, stablecoins, Ripple? I don't know. I mean, this is crazy. It's something that people have been talking about now for months and months and months, if not years, and you're starting to see things amp up. There have been bills in Congress, no activity, but now you're starting to see some clarity coming out of the Federal Reserve and other areas, not just Congress, but there are many bills in Congress. Let's get ready. I don't know. I want to talk about this right now, today. Let's go.
And now, the HODL Review with Jeff on the Chain.
Boom, I forgot to introduce myself. Hey, this is Jeff. You are here on the HODL Review exclusively on the chain. So yes, we are going to dig in today into this situation, this scenario where the Federal Reserve is actually going to be involved somehow. These Federal Reserve banks or these federal banks involved somehow in the cryptocurrency world. There's already been a lot of conversation going on behind the scenes. We're going to go through a little bit of a journey today on today's video. We're going to cover some interesting articles over the past couple months, and we're going to pull it all together, and we're going to come to some unknown conclusion at the end. So first and foremost, so here I am, I'm on Twitter, reading stuff, and I see this article from Zero Hedge. Now, I'm looking at the people comment. They're like, oh my God, this is so amazing. Because of this, the digital asset space about to blow up, and whatever, you see all these comments on it. And so I start reading this article. Then I start thinking, other things that have been transpiring from OCC to the Federal Reserve, different statements that have been happening recently over the past couple of weeks. But this article that was on Zero Hedge, the title of the article, An Unprecedented Monetary Overhaul, the Fed is preparing to deposit digital dollars directly to each American. Now, when I went back and I read the article from the Fed, is that exactly the case? I don't know, but let's get into this article because as they dig in, I thought it was really interesting. He starts talking about deflation and inflation and monetary policies and all this stuff. And I'm like, all right, but let's get to the part that we want to talk about, digital asset. I want to know about what's going on. What are their thoughts? And so I get into where they start actually referring back to the Cleveland Fed president, Loretta Mester, who delivered this speech to the Chicago Payment Symposium titled Payments and Pandemic. I ended up pulling up that speech. We're going to go through some comments directly from that speech. But in this article, I thought it was interesting because he highlights in a specific section in the central bank digital currencies, and then we're going to go right to it. But here it says the Cleveland Fed president writes, the experience with pandemic emergency payment has brought forward an idea that is already gaining increased attention at central banks around the world, that is CBDCs or central bank digital currencies. And in the shocking punchline, then goes on to reveal legislation has proposed that each American have an account at the Fed in which digital dollars could be deposited as liabilities of the Federal Reserve banks, which could be used for emergency payments. I'm like, hey, this is really interesting, right? So then I said, let me go into, let's pull up this article. Then we're going to say, okay, now we're reading this, but what other things happened just over the past couple months, past couple weeks? What's been going on that really makes this interesting? Because there's a lot of other moving pieces. It's not just about the Federal Reserve. It's not just about Loretta Mester, who yesterday or today, let me see. Oh, today is the 23rd. So as of today, wrote this, had spoken. And this is the speech, but it's interesting because, from this speech, here's a quick, I'm going to pull out some quick sections that I thought were interesting. Today, I will discuss some of the effects the pandemic has had on the U.S. payment system and update you on some of our ongoing efforts to modernize the payment system. So the Federal Reserve 100% identified legacy payment system versus the new modern that's needed. Here it goes on. The pandemic has affected the payments business, including payment patterns and volumes. The most important thing to recognize is that the U.S. payment system has been weathering the pandemic without significant disruptions. In the article or in her speech, she gets into areas that may have suffered a little bit, like coins. We saw a big coin shortage. People using paper currency. Well, people weren't out shopping as much, so credit card usage went through the roof. People ordering foods, all of this. So people getting even more accustomed to utilizing a digital foundation for their payment solution. But so here it says, another key lesson is that having the right technology in place can make a big difference in being able to address the challenges posed in an environment of rapid change in the payments behavior. Now, I find this interesting because here you have the Federal Reserve, which has this FedNow that's been in development and was promised within a 5-year period and was supposed to have been done already. But now they promised it 5 years from 2019, so it's not going to be available maybe until 2023 or 2024. Now, there's other similar solutions that are out there in Europe, and RippleNet, the digital asset space. Some things are going on with the DeFi. There's a lot of technologies that are building up and developing right now in the cryptocurrency digital asset space that might even be better than FedNow. Why is the FedNow taking 5 years to build up this solution that might already exist, or at least the technology exists that they can incorporate, right? So here, go on. This is a global pandemic, and demand for consumer-to-consumer and cross-border payments has risen as people want to send and receive payments in support of family and friends. Interesting, right? Now she goes on. Some payment technologies are more resilient, scalable, and adaptable to such rapid change in user behavior and volume. Some industry participants note that cloud technologies are inherently more scalable and adaptable. So here she's focusing on cloud technologies. Didn't mention digital asset, but are there better payment technologies? 100% more resilient, more scalable, more adaptable. We're starting to see them develop. They're acknowledging and admitting that the legacy solution is outdated, doesn't work, and we're starting to see the impact of it. The same time, like ACH, America Clearinghouse, has taken a hit. I'm sure SWIFT, to some extent, has taken a hit due to the lack of full movement. You're not seeing a lot of the big business transactions. A lot of people are pulling back. Maybe some of the cross-border payments in certain areas throughout the regions in Asia. I know a lot of people in India a lot of people flocked back home. So you had a lot of people from India that might have worked in Dubai or elsewhere are back home, and same thing in other areas. However, there's still a lot of foreign workers, a lot going on that need to happen. Goes on here. It says it would be wrong to say that the pandemic has been the catalyst for payment system modernization. Right, it's not necessarily the catalyst, but it's definitely shown a big flashlight on the fact, or a big spotlight on the fact that the legacy system is definitely broken and needs to be modernized, something that the Federal Reserve had been reluctant, although they've been focused on developing this FedNow solution. Then it goes on, the Federal Reserve Bank have been assessing our payments technology for some time, and much of that time they were ignoring it. Here we go. It says, industry efforts to replace decades-old core banking systems will be more flexible, resilient, and cloud-friendly platforms. And to integrate the old with the new along the way may need to be accelerated to ensure that we're prepared for the future. So think about some of the things that Ripple have been doing. RippleNet, bringing cross-border payment solutions, modernizing the scalability, the transparency, the speed, the decreased cost, the access and availability to the unbanked throughout the world. That's where digital assets, the focus. Right? So you're starting to see a trend, and you're starting to see even the Federal Reserve acknowledging the fact that the way they've been working is broken, that there are better solutions out there. I'm breaking down this article into like little snippets. It's a lot longer than this. But then there's a section here from FedNow, and I think this is interesting because here it says the Federal Reserve or FedNow service, which is currently being built, will be an around-the-clock service whereby payments can be originated, cleared, and settled within seconds. I don't know. They're already doing it. Not them, but RippleNet is doing it. R3 is doing it. We're starting to see more and more solutions like that that will pop up that are doing it. But yet here they're talking about what they will be able to do. Now it's interesting because again it says here our goal to bring FedNow to market as soon as possible. The target date remains 2023, 2024. Blah, blah, blah. We go down the article. Central bank digital currencies. The experience with pandemic emergency payments has brought forward the idea that was already gaining increased attention at central banks around the world. That is central bank digital currencies. They go on legislation has been proposed that each American have an account at the Fed in which digital dollars could be deposited as liabilities of the Federal Reserve banks, which could be used for emergency payments. Other proposals would create a new payments instrument, digital cash, which would be just like the physical currency issued by central banks today, but in a digital form, potentially without the anonymity of physical currency. So they kind of get it, right? They're starting to see that there's a trend moving forward. Interesting, they talk about the CBDC, they're talking about the digital dollar, digital cash. They're starting to wake up to this idea that something is actually happening, but then she had to cover up her tracks. It says experimentation like this is an important ingredient in assessing the benefits and costs of a central bank digital currency, but does not signal any decision by the Federal Reserve to adopt such a currency. Issues raised by the central bank digital currency related to financial stability, market structure, security, privacy, and monetary policy all need to be better understood. So they say this is great. We need to change. It has to happen. We have this FedNow solution. But guess what? Well, we're not going to do it. It's not going to happen because it's still under research. So that's kind of where that ends up. But then you start thinking, wait a minute. What are some of the things that just happened? So, July 22nd, 2020, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, right? OCC, the Office of the Comptroller of the Currency, what did they do? What was the big news back in July? Federally chartered banks and thrifts may provide custody services for crypto assets. Banks are able to provide custody for crypto assets. What is the Federal Reserve acknowledging today? Their system is broken. There's better systems out there. Their better system isn't going to be ready for another 3 or 4 years. However, they need to have an immediate solution to fix things. They saw a lot of things, a lot of spotlights were shown on all the broken areas around the world, not just in the US. This idea of emergency payments getting to people rapidly, a digital dollar, you can't rush that through. You can't force it. They're identifying the central bank digital currencies. She talks about it, then retracts it. But here you have, so now let's broaden our horizons again. So July 22nd, 2020, the federally chartered banks and thrifts may provide custody services for crypto assets. I think this is such an important point that's being made. It says here, national and state banks and thrifts have long provided safekeeping and custody services, including both physical objects and electronic assets. The OCC has specifically recognized the importance of digital assets and the authority for banks to provide safekeeping for such assets since 1998. So digital assets since 1998. Okay, so in this case, it's got to refer to digital assets. So it goes on in this statement here, in this article from them. In the letter published today, this is July of 2020, the OCC concludes that providing cryptocurrency custody services, including holding unique cryptographic keys associated with cryptocurrency, is a modern form of traditional bank activities related to custody services. Crypto custody services may extend beyond passively holding keys. So this is really, really, to me, it was just huge news. And we talked about it a few months ago. We kind of glossed over it, but now it's going to resurface Why does it resurface again? Because of the statements that just came out of the Federal Reserve and this article that kind of highlighted and underscored it that was on Zero Hedge. But this on its own isn't enough, right? So there's got to be more. So now in July, so we're seeing the Federal Reserve acknowledging their system's broken. They know there's better solutions. They've acknowledged central bank digital currencies. They've retracted, said that it's not good. They have a Fed now. It's not going to be available for another 3 or 4 years. They know they have to have some type of a solution. And then what happens a couple days ago? September 21st. 2 days ago, maybe a few days before that. When did it actually come out? This was big news. U.S. banking regulator authorizes federal banks to hold reserves for stablecoins. Federal banks in the U.S. see new capacity to provide services to crypto firms, specifically stablecoin operators. So now we see two different things happen here. We see an acknowledgement from the comptroller, from the Office of the Comptroller of Currency, that banks can now custody digital asset. Why are they doing that? Why is that significant? Why is the Federal Reserve noticing that things are broken? Why is the Federal Reserve not prepared with the digital now? But here's another thought. So now we have these big exchanges. What are some of the things that we talk about on the chain and the auto review all the time? The blurring of the banks and the digital asset exchanges. Which one comes first? Does the digital asset come first, or does the bank come first? Now we saw these acknowledgments, but what did we see come first? We saw a digital asset exchange become a bank and get a banking license in Wyoming, and that was Kraken, right? So Kraken, the exchange Kraken, US-based Kraken, which had been in New York, actually pulled out of New York due to the issues with the BIT license. But Kraken in Wyoming, they get licensing, a banking license. Huge. So here you have a digital asset exchange that's banking, and then you have the U.S. banking regulator authorizing federal banks to hold reserves for stablecoins, and you have the OCC allowing federally chartered banks and thrifts to start custodying digital asset. So now you're seeing all this stuff happening all at the same time. Well, that was a few months ago in July when they allowed the banks to custody, but now you're seeing Kraken becoming a bank. Banks custodying digital assets. You guys see where this is going? The blurring of the lines. It's coming together. The Federal Reserve acknowledging. And so now things need to change. So the Federal Reserve was talking about payments, cross-border payments. They're not just talking about domestic central bank digital currency. They're talking about moving money cross borders to other people around the world, the family members. Same thing Zero Hedge is talking about. Same thing that RippleNet has been focused on now since 2012 for 8 years, to unseat what SWIFT has been very poor at doing. Granted, they've been doing it for 40 plus years. So, they've been doing it a long time, 47 years, let's say, 46 years. So here you have Kraken getting their Bitcoin license, or their banking license, Bitcoin license. And so, it's really, really amazing. What are some of the things that Kraken is going to be doing with that? Why is this so significant? What can you do when you have a banking license? So here's a direct statement from the CEO of Kraken Financial, David Knitsky. He says, "We are going to have direct access to the federal payment system and be able to more seamlessly integrate funding and withdrawal mechanisms and payment mechanisms into our products." Now, could they have done this if the Federal Reserves couldn't custody digital asset? Or what about the U.S. banking regulator that's now authorizing federal banks to hold reserves for stablecoins? I don't know. Maybe this has something to do with it, because maybe Kraken is going to also be offering some stablecoins. People are going to move it in and out. Maybe those stablecoins need to be held someplace, or at least the reserves for the stablecoin needs to be held someplace, not just from Kraken, but from others. So here it says they'll be able to more seamlessly withdraw payment. Okay. And so this goes on to his statement here. And so they should see an increase in quality of customer experience and perhaps a cost benefit as well. And then they'll really see the difference once we start launching new products. What kind of products? Debit cards backed by digital assets, staking, IRA accounts, tax advantage accounts, wealth management, investment product services. So Kraken is planning. They are the first ones, first mover advantage. Now, what does all this have to do with anything? How does this even factor into RippleNet and XRP? Why do I bring it up? Because what's the one thing that everyone always talks about XRP? It's the banker's coin. So why is it relevant to banking? Oh, well, let's see. So here's a great statement, and this is where RippleNet, as we know, RippleNet is providing cross-border payment solutions to banks and financial institutions all over the world. They're expanding their corridors as we speak into the Middle East, into Asia, into Latin America. We know where they have been, but they're constantly expanding and growing their presence. But more than this, so here's a statement. This came out. When was this? This wasn't that long ago. This was back in March. So here's a statement. It came out from the CTO, none other than David Schwartz. There was a statement. Proof of work is kind of a technological dead end. But he says here, one of the features that I think is very exciting is a feature that would allow people to launch. Well, stable coins are the obvious use case, but it's not just stable coins. It's essentially assets pegged to some external value. So here's RippleNet standing out in this whole conversation, talking about, can you actually build stable coins on the XRP ledger? Amazing, right? So here's a statement out of the article. One feature Ripple may be unveiling would allow third parties to launch other third-party cryptocurrencies on the XRP system. And we started to see things like that, like Sologenic, kind of in that vein. The details of this feature have yet to be announced, but Schwartz mentions it could be used to introduce fixed value tokens like stablecoins to the ledger. Now, this becomes really key to the entire conversation, mainly because of, let's see, U.S. banking regulator authorizes federal banks to hold reserves for stablecoins. You see how it's all coming together now? It's amazing. It really, really is amazing. Now, why would David Schwartz talk about stable coins and being able to somehow influence it on the ledger? Why is the XRP ledger so unique? Why is it distinguished in the banking space? Why is it that the federally chartered banks are now going to be able to custody services for crypto assets? Why is it that Kraken got their first banking license? Amazing, right? CBDCs are going to exist within their silos when they are developed, and we're starting to see. We look at China, we say, well, China is just light years ahead. But while China is light years ahead, although we do not have regulatory clarity within the government, within Congress, we're starting to see important aspects within our monetary system making certain decisions and making certain statements that allow you to have a little bit of clarity on the space. It might not be full regulatory clarity, but you have clarity because if the federally chartered banks are allowed to provide custody services for crypto assets, guess what? Crypto assets aren't going anywhere. If the U.S. banking regulator authorizes federal banks to hold reserves for stablecoins, guess what? Stablecoins aren't going anywhere. These organizations wouldn't be doing this and allowing this if the digital asset space and stable coins were going away. It just isn't possible. That's just how it is. That's just the reality. So here we are. We just spoke for 23 minutes. I hope you got a lot out of this conversation. I thought this was amazing. You dig into it, CBDCs and banks and the Federal Reserve and, he just goes on and on and on. Digital assets, custodying. Man, guess what? Next year is going to be even more amazing. We're getting ready to go into Q4 next week. Q4 of 2020. 2020 is going to end an amazing year for the digital asset space. All politics aside, the digital asset space is blowing up globally. Really interesting. How does that influence us? Well, we're investing in crypto assets, and we have something invested in to see the development of the blockchain space in general. That's why we're all here. So anyhow, I hope you enjoyed today's video. I hope you spent every last minute of the 25 minutes enjoying with me. And if you liked the video, thumbs up. Hit that subscribe button if you haven't subscribed to our channel yet. And if you haven't subscribed yet, where have you been? Holy cow. You definitely need to subscribe. And if you look below, we always talk about coffee a lot, and there's some coffee selections. You can go down, check them out. There's some links over to Amazon. You can see the different coffees that I enjoy. That's it. Until next time. Ooh, maybe that's on Saturday mornings at 8 a.m. or Sunday evenings at 8 p.m. on the roundtable. Saturday 8 a.m.s only on the Hodl Review. Let's go.
Are you down with OTC? Please like, subscribe, and click the bell to be notified when the next video drops.